Have you ever had that feeling, where your entire team is working flat out, just grinding away, but your output is completely stuck? It's so frustrating. You throw more people at the problem. You tell everyone to work harder, but the final numbers, they just don't budge. Well, today we're going to figure out exactly why. It's because you haven't found the one thing, the single bottleneck that's holding your entire operation hostage. So what is really going on here? See, every process is just a chain of linked steps. And if everybody is busy, but the end result isn't getting any better, it means you're working hard in all the wrong places. And get this, it doesn't just fail to help. It actually creates total chaos and massive piles of inventory. But here's the good news. The problem isn't that your whole system is broken. Nope. The problem is that one single part of it, kind of like an unseen saboteur, is setting the pace for everyone else. This is your bottleneck. It's your constraint. And our mission today is to give you the tools to find it. And the tool we're going to use is the theory of constraints, or a TOC for short. It's a really powerful idea with a simple truth right at its core. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. It's that simple. In any process, your total output, what we call throughput, is determined by one and only one constraint. And here's the kicker. Improving anything else is literally a waste of your time and your money until you've dealt with that single weakest link. Okay, take a look at this. This is a real-world example from a new loan application process. Now, the total time for one application to get all the way through the system is almost 30 days. But, and this is wild, the actual time someone is physically working on it is just over an hour. Think about that. The rest of that time is just dead time, where applications are just sitting in piles waiting. And those piles, well, those are your biggest clues. And this number right here, this just brilliantly illustrates the point. Right before the quality check step in that same loan process, there is a pileup, a backlog of 4,704 applications just sitting there, waiting to be processed. This is what a bottleneck looks like in the wild. You don't always need some complex data analysis. Sometimes you just need to get up, walk the floor, and see where the biggest pile is. That's your constraint, right there in plain sight. Okay, so a pile of over 4,000 applications, that is a massive, glaring signal. But, just knowing where the problem is isn't enough. You need a system to actually fix it. And that brings us to Elihu Goldratt's 5 focusing steps. This is your systematic, repeatable recipe for continuous improvement. So let's break these down. It's super logical. First, you identify the constraint. We just did that by finding that huge pileup. Next, you exploit it. This just means squeezing every single ounce of productivity out of that bottleneck without spending a dime. Then you subordinate everything else to it. What does that mean? Well, if your bottleneck can handle 10 items an hour, the step right before it should only feed it 10 items an hour. Anything more just builds a bigger, useless pile. After that, and only after that, you elevate. This is when you might consider spending money on a new machine or more people, but it's always a last resort. And finally, you repeat the whole process. Because as soon as you fix one bottleneck, I promise you another one will always appear. And that, my friends, is continuous improvement. So this is the really crucial point, understanding the difference between exploiting and elevating. Most people, they just jump straight to elevating. They see a bottleneck and immediately say, we need a bigger, faster machine. That is a huge and usually very expensive mistake. First, you exploit. Can you run the machine during lunch breaks? Can you reduce defects so it's not wasting time on rework? You have to remember an hour of downtime at the bottleneck is an hour of lost output for the entire system. You only elevate once you've exhausted every single low-cost option to exploit the constraint you already have. Okay, so how do you manage this whole system once you've found your bottleneck? How do you subordinate everything to it, like we just talked about? Well, there's a really elegant system for this, and it's called drum buffer rope. To really get this, I want you to picture a squad of soldiers marching in a single file line. The whole troop, the whole group, can only move as fast as the slowest soldier. It doesn't matter how fast the soldier at the very front can walk. If he runs ahead, the line just stretches out and eventually breaks. That slowest soldier dictates the speed of the entire system. And that, right there, is your bottleneck. The drum buffer rope system puts this exact analogy into practice. The drum is the beat set by your bottleneck, your slowest soldier. It tells the entire factory the pace of production. The buffer is a small strategic amount of work you place right before the bottleneck, just to make sure it never has to stop and wait for something to do. And the rope? The rope is a signal that connects the very first step of the process all the way to the drum. You only release new raw materials into the system when that rope pulls. In other words, when the bottleneck is ready for more. This is what prevents you from building those massive, wasteful piles of inventory in the first place. So the toolkit is now in your hands. You have the visual cues to go out and spot the constraint, you've got the 5 steps to systematically improve it, and you've got the elegant drum buffer rope system to manage the entire flow. The theory itself is actually pretty simple, but its application is incredibly powerful. Now it's your turn. These principles don't just apply to factories, not at all. They apply to your personal productivity, your team projects, your sales pipeline, really any system that is a sequence of steps. So I want you to take a hard look at your own world. Where are the piles? Where is all the waiting happening? What is the one thing that if you improve it will elevate everything else? Don't just work harder, work smarter. Go find your bottleneck.